Hello, this is Cotton Soups and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video, and today's video is on Krakaloa's Soul Burst. Sadly, there is no gifts of Krakaloa's Soul Burst yet, so you're gonna have to stick with the original one. But besides that, Krakaloa's Soul Burst looks to be a very strong and versatile Lumion on a lot of teams. It can honestly fit on any type of team style, which is saying a lot for a Lumion this bulky. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about Krakaloa. From the counters and checks and teammates you'll need to know in order to use Krakaloa in the battle, as well as knowing the sets and roles that Krakaloa will be needing to know in order to actually team build around Krakaloa. Today's video is all about how to use and counter Krakaloa. So the role that Soul Burst will be playing for Krakaloa is a very simple question to answer, and we can answer it with its base stats. Its base stats are really great, as you have really high melee and range defense stats of 100 and 104 respectively. This is nothing too high, but when you consider that it's both of these defenses that are pretty high, then of course Krakaloa immediately has the power to tank hits from both sides of the spectrum. This is even more compounded with the fact that it has a high HP stat of 115. So Krakaloa is going to be taking so much hits from both sides even when non-invested, so that's really great for it. It also retains its high energy stat of 125, and it does have a pretty good range attack stat of 121, which is the opposite of its original form, as now you actually do hit hard and you do threaten a lot of offensive Lumions now, which is a stark contrast to what the old Krakaloa was. And of course, your speed and melee attack is your weakest links, but that's pretty much given for a Krakaloa evolution. And of course, to even more hit home about its defenses, it has 8 resistances to a lot of common typings, for example fire, dark, electric, and metal, all 4 of those being really common. Fire types, it's mainly only Pyrolin, other Krakaloa Soul Bursts, and Soul Burst Eruptodon, but these 3 are still really common fire types and are pretty good to swap in on because you do have the power to threaten them out, which all 3 of them considerably are threatened by you, and of course they are pretty important Lumions to take advantage of. You can also take advantage of stuff like Fire Breath, Zulong, and Ikazune, but other than that, these guys still threaten you, so this resistance to fire, it may seem good, but just know that there are ways to play around it. Dark types, you don't want to, well, you're not really affected by this because you of course have your Soul Burst and it won't cancel, so Slapdown won't matter too much on you, which is honestly pretty good. Electric, Zip Zap will be your main worry here, but you do have the ability to tank it, so just tank it pretty easily. And metal types here, Valkyrie and Stratosaur are mainly going to be the ones you want to swap in on. More so, well, not really any of them actually, because they do hit you super effectively respectively, so it's only really useful in terms of playing resistances out with your team in order to energy stall them or stuff like that. It also does have 6 weaknesses. Mainly the ones you want to watch out for is your light and ancient resistances. Krakaloa has absolutely nothing for light and ancient types, which is really concerning, but overall your other weaknesses shouldn't be worried about too much. Water types, besides Luminami and some other exceptions, most water types wouldn't want to swap in on you on a unresisted move, so that's fine there. Air types, you hit them back super effectively, or most of them, and even if it's not super effective, you hit them hard back anyway. Wintrix hits by Fire Breath, and of course Gargolem attack is frail, so it doesn't want to be 1v1ing you on that occasion. Light types, Nimore, Valkyrie, Luminami, they're all 3 light types that can take advantage of you pretty easily, so this light weakness is obviously not that great. And spirit types, as hard as it actually seems, not only do you hit most spirit types super effectively, but you do wall some spirit types such as Versal, which is honestly really surprising. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Krakaloa's role, which honestly, it's very simple now, but it's a bulky, somewhat offensive Lumion. It has the ability to take hits from pretty much anything it wants that is not like super effective, and because it is offensive, it's not going to be like being able to take advantage of setup that much. And of course, it is a great sponge, like I said, for both attacking spectrums, so you can honestly go for a bulky route for Soul Burst Krakaloa, or even an offensive route for Krakaloa, which can work in Bane of Haste teams or any other offensive team like that. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Krakaloa's set. So for Krakaloa's Soul Burst set, your ability of choice before you Soul Burst is Combustible. Combustible will allow you to take a fire type hit, like as an immunity, so you can potentially Soul Burst into a Lumion that has no chip on it. So that's really great for it. Of course, Applied Frustration will be your ability of choice and the only ability because it is your default ability once you Soul Burst. And your personality here will be Robust, Clever, Very Frail. Robust is so we can help up our matchups against certain spirit types, and for Clever, Clever is mainly so we can help our matchups against range attackers that can still hit us super effectively. Of course, Very Frail is to decrease the stat we're not using. Our moveset here, Fire Breath is mainly so we have the stab move and we can hit potential plant and metal type super effectively that want or can or stuff that we do wall, so that's good. Burn Up and Rejuvenate, they're your two best moves. Burn Up increases your damage and removes hazards, and Rejuvenate here, it's mainly so we can heal and have more longevity. And for Spectral Burst, there's really no reason to run this, but because we do want our matchups against certain brawler types to be faster, and of course it is stab, we run that. However, if you want to run Mudslide just so you don't get walled by Provoke Gobidemic, stuff like that, or not walled but stopped by Provoke Gobidemic, and you can also speed up your Eruptodon versus Krakaloa matchup even faster, that is an option as well. And for your TPs, 12 energy, you really only want to stay with this so you can get to 305 energy at level 50 battles. It will let you use a ton of moves very successfully, and of course it does even out with your Fire Breaths and your potential burn ups and other move combinations as well, so that is pretty good. And for your HP stat, you want to max this out as well as your range defense stat, and the 88 melee defense is leftovers, but this does let you get 4-hit KO'd by a Shadow Sprint, Vesperatu, and Your Soul. This also does help against other spirit types like Harvesect and the likes of that. However, if Vesperatu or Your Soul has Phantom Slash, which honestly it's probably not the case most likely, then you're gonna be getting away with walling one or the two of them. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Krakaloa's offensive and defensive teammates as well as its counters and checks. So offensive counters and checks here, it's really simple. You just want to run stuff that can outspeed Krakaloa, revenge kill it with super effective hits. Nemare obviously being the best one here because Nemare does have the ability to resist or be immune to all of its moves. So Nemare gets some plus points as from there as well. The new Ancient type Ice Lumion, while it does get hit super effectively by Fire Breath, it is an option because you do have Ancient Stab to hit Krakaloa super effectively. This also goes for Zulong. You just want to run Lumion that will outspeed and of course hit Krakaloa super effectively, which isn't a lot, so do that what you can. And of course, using Deldrix and Garlash as offensive water types is also something to take note of. Defensive waters such as Luminami also take advantage of this, and earth types as a whole such as Tyrex, Borok, Gargdi, and some more bulky earth types can also take advantage of Krakaloa. Another thing to take note of is its offensive and defensive teammates. Because of how much teams Krakaloa can really fit, I can't really put all the teammates on here, but it will benefit a lot from defensive Stratosaurs, mainly because you do wall some electric types such as Ikazune pretty well, and as well as Halvantic, which is actually really surprising. So Stratosaur will love your presence on your team. Teclipse is kind of here, mainly because you don't want to be taking those Phantom Slashes, so Teclipse is here just so you can be immune to them. Tatab and Zulong and Metatoad and Halvantic, they're also just overall good Lumions to pair with Krakaloa because they do resist its weaknesses, which is also very nice. and they do get opened up by range tank Lumions that Krakaloa can potentially break, so these guys are also pretty good for it. And of course, Krakaloa does also break melee stuff that Halvantic is also somewhat weak to, such as Bar Blast and Obsidian, so that is also pretty good. And as for defensive stuff, Electric types, they're gonna be your best bet. They can help against air types like Nimare really well. And Luminami, for most water types, Luminami is going to be able to pivot off of them pretty well. And it also does overall just pair really well with what you resist and what you don't. So that's also pretty good. Toxic types that can deal with the other water types such as Venilent and Barblast are also good answers. And Icicle and Gargolem defense here are just overall good pivoters, and Icicle Trap and Barb support that will help Krakaloa in your matches. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the conclusion and my thoughts on Soul Burst Krakaloa. So overall, Krakaloa Soul Burst wise looks really versatile. I'm not even gonna be talking, I didn't even talk about what it can actually stop, but just knowing the fact that it can actually stop stuff that super effectively hits Krakaloa is obviously something to watch out for. Krakaloa, stating the obvious here, it walls a lot of melee attackers, it stops Halvantic and Tatab, which is honestly really good. It stops Ikazune for the most part. Ikazune can still pivot out, but Krakaloa, despite being hit super effectively by Energy Surge or Flash and Flee, it also does pretty well against that. It also does somewhat well against Zulong too, even though it has Elemental Burst. It does so much well against a lot of the stuff, and because it has really good balanced out defenses, even though you're not going to be walling like every single thing like Pyroland does or Venilin does or the other range tanks, you do have the ability to take hits from both sides of the spectrum, so you're not only just an overall range tank, but you can also take hits on the melee side as well. So Krakaloa looks to be a very great Lumion on a lot of teams. It has hazard removal with burn up. It has the damage output to actually threaten stuff. It can actually break walls as well with burn up and setup, so that's also good. And its defensive typing just offers a lot of things that we don't really have at the moment. Krakaloa overall just seems to be a very versatile wall or offensive Lumion depending on what you want to run it on your team. And honestly, if there would be a Soul Burst other than Eruptodon that I would recommend, Krakaloa would be my second. So if you enjoyed the video and found something informational, then of course like the video and subscribe. If you want to see more videos such as new Soul Burst content, and of course content on the new Lumions, and of course turn on notifications as well. This is Soup signing off to remind you that Zulong is a dumpster fire.